So let's talk about Senate Bill 1438, which is the protection of children. I think that Florida, we established a lot of laws that are highly controversial. I mean, we're not the only state that does it, but we tend to be in the news a lot. So I'd like to cover this law so that we can know what the law actually says, what our legal rights actually are, and what to expect. So what does it say? The law specifically says the following. If you get a Florida issued license, either a liquor license, a business license, any type of license issued by the state of Florida to conduct business, and you admit a child to an adult live performance, then you can be subject to sanctions such as a fine, suspension, and revocation. Now, the media has done many things lately that we could probably disapprove of. But regardless, the media has dubbed this the drag ban law, right? So you can't go to a drag show because it's banned, and Florida's bad for that. However, as you can tell, and I'll give you the statute that it will actually reflect upon, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as to where they got this particular topic and why they're implementing it. But it is Senate Bill 1438. So once it goes into law, it'll get a Florida statute assigned to it. But essentially what happens in this particular circumstance, there's nothing written in the law. It does not actually say drag show. So what I find interesting is that if a drag show is known to be adult live performance, like adult content, and you don't allow children, I kind of feel like that's common sense. We shouldn't let children see adult things. That's why you have like a rated R rating on a movie. That's why you warn people of like explicit content. I mean, even things on YouTube and in other social media forums, there's a lot of things that have been edited. They're taken down. Things are taken down because the content is not meant for children, right? So what happens? The law is just essentially just reflecting that, like, you don't expose children to adult content. So where did this all come from? Well, if you look at Florida Statute 847-013, I believe, it is against the law to intentionally expose children, minor children, to movies, exhibitions, presentations, shows, or images that are considered sexually explicit or harmful, including nudity, bestiality, sexual excitement, sexual conduct, sexual battery, or abuse. And that is what the actual law says. There are criminal sanctions for people who expose children to this type of content. So, if it's against the law to expose children to certain material because it's adult content, it's not far-reaching for the law to say that you're prohibited from doing this act because it's illegal. So I think we can surmise, based on Florida statute, which has already been codified, it's already in the statute, it's already become law, and this Senate Bill 1438, it's not far-reaching. It's just basically saying what we should have already been doing. We shouldn't expose children to explicit material in sexual in nature or in otherwise. We want to protect and safeguard the children, and that's why they called it the protection of children. I mean, I think it's common sense when you don't want to take your child, your minor child, to one of these strip joints, right? You wouldn't go and say, hey, let's just go make a family trip of it and let's go to a strip joint and let's all go watch these people get naked and do sexually explicit things. So the same would be true of any type of performance that's adult content. Now, there's also the people that like or will allow their children to be part of these types of shows, which is also problematic because there's Florida statute and federal law that says you cannot exploit children in that manner. You cannot use them in that manner. You cannot allow them to parade around either nude or almost nude, doing sexually explicit things because then that's considered to be child porn. That is what that is. So if you know that there's laws that prohibit you from doing these acts, and this law is solidifying and holding accountability, not just to the people that are doing it, but to the establishments that are allowing it. So it's not just like a one employee who did it, it's the entire establishment that they could have their license revoked. That creates a standard that you are not going to violate the other laws that are already in place. And I think that this is just a way to safeguard our children, safeguard them from being exploited or being exposed to things that they don't need to be exposed to at this time. So I think this particular, law will be getting a bad rap if we call it the drag ban, because it's not specific to that. It's just any adult content. And I think that we need to be mindful. And when somebody calls it a certain thing, I think it would be very good for us to start learning to go and look up what the law actually says, because a lot of things get hidden in interpretation, a lot of things get lost in that interpretation. And I think depending on the view that you have on the specific topic, you might get a biased opinion. So in order to avoid all that, I would recommend just reading the statute or the proposed law or the House bill or the Senate bill that's being proposed, so you are educated, that you know what it actually means and what it stands for. So I just wanted to take the time to just kind of flesh out some of those things that are happening in Florida. And I believe this law, in my personal opinion, is just reflective of what's already in place. So now we're just doing an extension of that. Well, if you didn't listen before, now you're going to have penalties and consequences for violating the law. And I think that that is just like anything else. If you're caught speeding, you get a speeding ticket. If you're caught showing adult content to children, then you should be sanctioned as well. That's just my opinion. But it isn't law yet, so we'll see what happens today. But that is what's on the table for the governor to sign. And I get the feeling that DeSantis will be signing that into law. Regardless, again, I just feel like it's already doing what we were already supposed to be doing. So it's not a far reach from what the law already says at this point. Now, if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe.